Hi, this is Tammy with Shabby Fabrics. Today I have a wonderful set of projects to show you. We're going to make the block together so I can show you how fun and easy it is to make the peppermint block. This is a peppermint table runner. We have peppermint placemats and matching cloth napkins. I love this collection. It's called Holiday Sweets by Hoffman Fabrics. And it's so pretty when you set your table with all of this fun stuff and the gold accents in the fabric pick up everything Christmas is about. I just love that for the holidays. All right, so let me show you the block that we're going to be making today. This is the peppermint block. All right, and I have several ways to make this. I'm just going to set this up here, just kind of keep a frame of reference as our target where we're going. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need to make half square triangles. Now, we do half square triangles. You can do them several different ways. We can do them, I'll show you maybe the old-fashioned way I call it, right? The original way. And that's a great way to make half square triangles. It works, right? So let's look at that first. So I'm going to take a ruler and a friction pen, and I'm just going to draw a line from corner to corner on the back of my square, like this. I'm going to layer my two squares together. And I'm just going to put a little pin in this just to hang on to these two squares because I don't want them jumping around on me when I get them to the sewing machine. And then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of this line. And then we're going to cut on the line and square them up. So I'm going to go do that, all right? All right, let's trim these little threads here. Use my little Karen Kate Buckley scissors. These are so sharp. I love these little scissors. They have a serrated blade and they really cut fabric nicely. These little ones are very handy to keep next to your machine for trimming threads. I like them. All right, we got that sewn. I'm going to go ahead and cut these apart and we are going to press. These apart here. So we're going to set our seam like this, and we're going to press this toward the red. Red up. Now the first thing that I did before I started cutting was I did use some magic sizing on my fabrics, and I set this here to remind myself to tell you to use some magic sizing. Sizing just helps with your fabric. It helps the creases stay in them. It just gives it a little bit of body and makes it easier to work with. I love magic sizing. I use it all the time. All right, so we have our half square triangles like this. Set this ruler aside for now, and I'm going to square this up. Now I'm going to use a 2.5 by 12.5 inch ruler by Creative Grids. I like this ruler. I'm going to show you why. It has a 45-degree line here and here. It has a white one, so if you're working on dark fabrics, or a black line if you're working on lighter fabrics. I'm working on lighter fabrics, so I'm going to line up this 45-degree line right there. Oh, perfect. All right, and I can easily see 2.5 inches on 3 sides, right? This is my 2.5 inch mark, and I can see my fabric goes over that. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to trim 2 sides. I'm going to turn my mat. This is the Creative Grids rotating cutting mat. I love this thing. It rotates easily. There's no fussing with it. All right, so now I'm just going to line up the green now perfectly with my 2.5. And I'm just going to trim the remaining 2 sides. All right, I have a perfect half square triangle. This is 2.5 inches. So it'd be 2 inches finished, okay? So you would just continue doing that for all of the half square triangles. Now the other way we can go about this And one of my favorite methods is we're going to use star singles. I like star singles because I can make 8 half square triangles at the same time. Kind of like paper piecing, except you're not, well, I suppose you are. You're sewing on the paper and you're cutting the paper. So it is very similar to paper piecing. All right, so we're going to take our 2 squares and we're going to put them right sides together like this. We're going to put our star single on top. And now I'm going to pin in these outside corners. So on a star single, the solid lines are my cutting lines, and the dashed lines with the arrows, those are my sewing lines, and they're numbered. It's perfect. So I always know where I'm going, and I never mess them up. I love that. And I'm going to show that to you. Okay, so we're completely pinned. So this is number 1, and I'm going to start right here. I sew on number 1, up to the dot, stop and pivot to here, pivot, and sew all the way around, just like that, and come off. Now I'm going to go do that, and when I come back, we're going to square it up together. I'm going to show you how to trim it and show you how perfect these half square triangles are. Okay? Okay, so I've sewn on all my lines. So I'm going to take my pins out. All right, so now when I go to trim this up, I'm definitely going to use my spinning mat. All right. So I like, again, the 2.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 4 outside corners off, or sides off. Take that whole side off. I'm just going to line it up, cut, and rotate. I like not having to pick up, I like that I'm not having to pick up my fabric every time. All I have to do is turn my mat and adjust my ruler. It's a very efficient way of making these. All right? Now, on the star single, you can see how I have a dashed line in the middle and I have a solid line in the middle. The dashed line is what I'm going to cut on next. And I like to cut this one now because I can see and line up my ruler on this point and on this point here. The dashed line could sometimes get confusing through the words. All right? We're just going to half turn, cut. Now I have a solid line to cut this side with, and then this side. All right, let's do this one. All right, so now I have 8 half square triangles. So I'm just going to simply remove the paper. I like to fold the paper first on my crease, and I just hold my thumbnail right here on this corner, and the paper tears right away. Just like that. And I'm going to press it towards the red fabric we did on the other ones. All right. I'm going to just trim off these little dog ears. And now let's take a look and see if we're still 2.5. Yep, we are dead on 2.5. So as you can see, this is a very fast way to make a lot of half square triangles quickly. And that's the cutting directions that we've given you in this pattern, our 4 star singles. We have all sizes available on our website, and I'm using the 2-inch ones. That refers to the finished size, is a 2-inch half star single. All right. Okay, so let's move on because I've done others ahead of time. We're just going to set these aside for now. Now let's move on to our pinwheel. The pinwheel in the center is as well done with half square triangles. Okay, so I have some half square triangles here that we're just going to put together. I like to lay them out how they're going to look ahead of time. I have turned blocks. I am notorious for picking this up. I'm going to take it to my machine to sew it. And when you get to your machine, you're like, now which side was I sewing? Was it this one? Or, yeah, and I have sewn the wrong side before. That's very common. That's a common mistake I've made. So I found to fix that so that I don't do it as often is when I put these two together, I'm going to nest these two seams right here because we press towards the red, right? So my seams will nest, and I'm going to actually put a pin in that. Now I know this is how I'm sewing it because I'm sewing down into this corner, and that's why I pinned the bottom corner. All right, so let's go do that. Okay. That's perfect. That's what I wanted. I want these seams to nest so I have a perfect point here. So now when I press this seam, I could press this either direction, but I prefer to press them open. The reason I'm going to press this open is so I can see exactly where I'm going to have to sew so I don't lose my points. So let's do that. I'm just going to set my seam and press this open. Beautiful. All right. So now I did this one ahead of time. So I have two. Now I'm going to put them together. So to get your points perfect in the center of a pinwheel like I have here, we press these seams all to the red. Okay, so now when I lay these two together, this seam right here and this seam are opposite. So these two seams now nest again. So I'm going to nest this together, and I'm going to put a pin in this. All right. Then I'm going to come over on the other side, and the same thing is true over here. So again, I'm going to put a pin in the nesting seams because I want to hold them together. I don't want them to move. Then I'm going to take a look, and where's my little baby scissors? And trim that little thread right there. And look at the top, and I think the overhead camera can see this, how my seams are together, and you can actually just move them apart just a little bit and make sure that they are still perfectly lined up because I press my seams open so you can see that. All right, so we can put one more pin in there if we feel like we need it. Just pin that right here. All right, so I'm going to go sew this a 1/4 inch, and I want to keep my thread. I should be sewing along, and my seam allowance, a 1/4 inch is going to be at the bottom of this triangle. Very easy to see. You hit the bottom of this triangle, we'll hit the bottom of this triangle, and we'll know we have perfect points. All right, well, let's go do that. All right, so let's see how we did here. Take our pins out. Let's check our points. Look at that. Perfect. All 4 points are coming together in the center exactly like I want them. So now I'm going to set my seam and press this seam open. Nice. All right. Perfect. All right, now for the next step, we're going to put a little snowball corner on all four corners of this to kind of make it twist and turn like a circle, right? So I need to get that circle going here. So for that, I have some little bitty I think these are 1.5. Yep, these are 1.5 inch squares. So now, let me see. We have 2 ways to do this, okay? The first way is by drawing a line, and I've done that with just a friction pen, setting this in the corner, and then sewing from corner to corner, sew on the line this time, not away from it, sew on the line, all right? And I can actually put a pin like right here to hang on to that. So now when I go to sew it, it's going to stay where I want it. The other way to do this is with another fun ruler. I like my Creative Grids rulers. This is a folded corner clipper. This ruler is amazing. This ruler, so if you were to do this now, first you have to draw the line, then you sew it, then you have to trim it, and then press it. If I use a folded corner clipper, I eliminate the need to draw the line, and I'm going to cut it ahead of time. So all I have to do is sew it and press it, and I'm done. I find this a huge time saver. This is amazing. All right, so I'm going to place my square in the corner, and I know this is a 1.5 inch square. So I'm going to line this up, and my pin's kind of in my way here. 1.5 inches, and you can see that footprint exactly. So I have 1.5 inches down, and this little mark here tells me that's the edge of my square. That's exactly where I want that, and I'm going to cut that. All right. Now I'm just going to sew this from corner to corner and press it, and we're done. All right. So let's go do that. All right, so I went ahead and sewed the other one as well. All right, so I'm just going to trim that. There we go. Okay, and let's press these towards the green. There we go. There's 2 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other 2, and I'll see you back here in just a minute. Okay, so I'm back, and I have sewn all 4 corners and pressed them to the green. And I wanted to kind of do a double check here. Let me grab my other ruler. This piece needs to still be 4.5 inches, even after I've snowballed all the corners. A lot of times when you put a snowball on a corner, and that's just this half square triangle, right? This sew and flip. If you're not careful and you pay attention to where your line is and how you're sewing that, if your seam allowance is too deep or too narrow, this block is now not the same size as it was when you started. So this block needs to be 4.5 inches. We're going to measure this and make sure, yep, my block is exactly 4.5 inches. You can see that, 4.5 and 4.5, and it's perfect in that footprint. So I know my block is good to go, and I'm good to move on. Right? I like to stop and check every now and then as you're moving through a block to make sure that your elements are all the correct size, and it will make a much nicer finished block in the end. All right? So I'm going to set that element aside. Now, the next thing we're going to do is flying geese. Now I'm going to introduce you to one of my very favorite rulers. This is the Ultimate Flying Geese tool by Deb Heatherly, Creative Grids again. I love this ruler. I use this ruler in my sewing room all the time, all the time. What I love about this ruler is it has many sizes. How many sizes? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 8 different sizes of flying geese that you can make with this one tool. I love that. You don't ever have to go and look for your pattern. That I love as well. All your cutting directions are on this ruler. That is phenomenal. How many times have you lost the directions to a ruler? I know, me too, all the time. So I am making a 2" by 4" finished size. So that's a 2.5 by 4.5" unfinished, right? That's what we've been working with. So we're going to follow the D instructions for a 2 by 4 finish, and that would be a 5 3/4" square, and I have cut that, and 4 3 1/4" squares. I have 2 here, and I have 2 here. So I have all 4 of my squares. All right. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a line on the back with a friction pen. Friction pens are my favorite. I have many of these. And also, once you buy friction pens, we also sell the refills for these. So if your friction pen doesn't work anymore, you don't have to buy the whole pen. Just get a refill. Just pick up a pack of refills. Then you will never run out of a friction pen, right? I love that about these. Okay. Just like that. So here we go. Let's get these on here. We're going to put one on like this and one on like this. All right. Now I'm going to take my pins. These are the extra fine patchwork pins by Clover. I love these pins. I sew with them all the time. They don't disturb my fabric. Once I can put a pin in that, it really does not disturb my fabric very much. It lays very flat. It stays smooth. I like that. They're very sharp. They are very, very sharp. So these are the extra fine patchwork pins. I've got a couple of different types of pins. All right, so once I get my 4 corners pinned down, I'm going to hold this corner, and I'm just going to reach in here with a pair of sharp scissors like these, are very sharp, and I'm going to trim the overlap right there. Did you see how I did that? Just trim those 2 corners out of there. My line is still lined up, but I took that out. That is going to reduce the bulk when we go to make our flying geese, all right? So now I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on either side of this line, all right? I'm going to go do that. When I come back, we'll cut it in half and press it and move to the next step. All right, I'm back. I did my seams. I'm going to remove my pins. 2.5 by 12.5" ruler. It's a nice one to have and keep by your machine to do cutting like this. I would normally do this cutting at my machine if you have that ability to cut and press next to your machine. All right, here we go. Set my seam, and I'm just going to flip these triangles that direction. I'm going to show you right here is where I trim that. Do you see that? So now I don't have the bulk of these seams. This would be very bulky right here because I would have another fabric from here and I have that other corner coming in here. That's why I like to take that out of there. All right, I'm going to set that one aside. Now I'm going to take another square that I've already drawn a line on. I'm going to set this right here in the corner like this. I'm going to pin it exactly the same way, away from my seam allowance so I don't have to remove any pins when I sew this, yet it's still held securely. You can see that it's not moving. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on this side, turn, and sew 1/4 inch on that side, and I'll be back. All right, so let me trim my long threads here. Okay, take our pins out, cut this in half. And now I'm going to press this out. We'll go ahead and press a couple of these like that. All right, so now you're thinking, well, that's beautiful, right? It's a little large. So this ruler now comes into play again. You can kind of clear my space here because I'm going to need to use my spinning mat to spin. All right, set him over there. All right, so on this ruler, we have at the top, we have trim 1, and at the bottom, I have trim 2. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use trim 1, and we look over here on our little chart, and again, I'm making a 2x4 finished size flying geese, and that's letter D. So letter D is the one I'm going to follow for my cutting guide here. This is a black and white dashed line for letter D, and I see that. So I'm going to line this up perfectly, just like that. And you can see how my dashed lines are following my angles. I have my D, and again, it tells me this is a 2x4, so I know I'm doing this the right way. All right, so now I'm going to trim this twice. I'm going to trim once. I'm going to turn my mat and trim again. All right, I'm going to turn my mat again, and now I just pick up my ruler and move it down. Now I'm using trim 2, and you can see how my dashed lines are perfectly outlining this flying geese. And again, my little numbers right here remind me I am using the correct one. It's a 2x4. I like those little reminders so I can just give myself a double check and make sure I'm not trimming the wrong size flying geese. All right, and there's a perfect size, perfect 2x4 finished size. So it's 2.5 by 4.5 right now. All right, so let's trim it again. Let's do that one more time. I'll do this a little quicker. Okay, so you can see how quickly you can go through a whole stack of flying geese and trim them. The spinning mat is key. This ruler is key. I love them. They work very well together. All right, so I'm going to set these aside. I don't need those anymore. All right, so let's lay out our block. I like to get a visual, lay my block out. I have a couple more flying geese over here. It's always good to do a visual. So I have the luxury of using this. If you did not have this, you would just use your pattern. And I'm going to grab that for you really quick. And you can see I'm using the table runner pattern today. But you can see the block is right here. And it full color patterns so that you have no question what fabric goes where and how your orientation is. I love that. We try very hard to give you guys the most accurate, complete pattern that we possibly can. We test our patterns here for their accuracy and their clarity. And of course, we use lots of pictures, which always makes it easier. All right, so I have this all laid out, just like this. Visual check tells me, yes, everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. Set this aside. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold this over and I'm going to pin this, all right? So again, you know that thing about going to the sewing machine and sewing it on wrong, because I almost always drop it or shift it in my hand and go, oh, I know how that went. Yeah, not always. So we're just going to pin these on, make sure I sew these correctly. If I don't, I do have my clover seam ripper on set with me today, but I don't want to have to use it. We'll just leave him right there. He can stay right there. Okay, I'm going to go sew these two and then we'll come back. Wow, I have quite the mess going here. just kind of sweep it all together. There we go. Looks better already. Here, we'll fix it. Okay, that's better. All right. And cut these apart. Take my pins out. All right, now how do you press that, right? I know that's your first question. Now how do I press that? In our pattern, we tell you how to press this stuff. That's always a big thing with me, is knowing how to press something. So when I look at the back of this, I can see that this one kind of wants to go this way and this one kind of wants to go that way, but they're opposite. So I'm going to take the easy option and I'm going to press them open. All right? That is almost always my easier option, especially when I have points, because now I have this white point, this little corner triangle is visible, and this green one is visible. So now I know I sew to the bottom of that and I hit my 1/4 inch, right? That's the goal. Wait a minute, that does not go there. That goes here. We'll press this one. All right, so now I'm going to show you how I do the center seam. All right, we're going to fold this over. What I want is you can see on this, I want this point to exactly match this intersection right here with the red and the white, okay? So to achieve that, I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to put it through the bottom of my point, right where I know you see my pin in there? I think you can probably see that. And then I'm going to put it 1/4 inch down, straight into that seam allowance. Let me wiggle these together. And when I know my pin is straight, my pin is going straight across. It's not twisted one way or the other. It's going straight across. I know I have those 2 points exactly where I want them. So I'm going to take my pin out, and now I'm going to put it down here in this seam allowance. All right? I'm going to go ahead and put a little pin here in this corner here, just to remind it, I want it to stay there. All right? Let's put one more pin in this. Sometimes you cannot have enough pins in something. Okay, but I do want you guys to see that I'm putting my pins out of my seam allowance so that I can start here and sew all the way to the end without having to stop and take out a pin. None of my pins are intersecting with my 1/4 inch seam allowance that I'm about to put in there. All right, let me show you. Let's do that. All right. Yep, perfect. Let's see how we did. There it is. That point is right where I want it. It's right at that intersection. Perfect. So again, on this one, I'm going to press this open. All right, let's go ahead and do that. All right, very good. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to go ahead and put this side on and this one and this one. When I come back, I'm going to show you how to put your rows together and we'll finish our block. All right, I'm back and I have my rows sewn together like this, and I have double checked this. We're going to do it again. My red is up and down and up and down, and all my flying geese are pointed the correct direction. My pinwheel is spinning. I think I'm going to put this block together. So here we go. I'm going to turn this like this, set it down. Now I pressed all these seams open. Now I'm going to leave this side up when I sew. And I chose this side because I have a point, and another point. This side I have no points on, right? So I want to keep my eyes on these points always points up when you sew points. That way you know if you're hitting that target or not. You've got to be careful to hit that triangle right there. And sometimes I get them pinned funny or something and they don't go together quite right. And I can see when I'm sewing, nope, I just missed that point. I can see it. I sew too narrow and you cut that point off. I just stop immediately, seam rip back a few and fix it. Just fix it real quick right when you do it. It's much easier than waiting till you get done with your block and then having to seam rip and tear more seams out. I like to fix things as I go. So I'm just lining up my seams that I pressed open like this. Now this center one, I would love to just put it together and sew. But again, I want to make sure this point hits right where that seam allowance is. So I'm going to take the time to put a pin at the base of that point. Come here. There it goes. Kind of try to fold back up on me here like this. So I'm at the top of my point and I'm going to take a 1/4 inch down, wiggle, 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 get my pin straight on. There we go. And now I'm going to pin this. All right. Now as long as I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and pin the other side on at the same time so I can sew them both in one fell swoop and we will have our block complete. There's one. And there's two. Like that. They're set. Let's go ahead and measure one more time. Top of that triangle. 1/4 inch in. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Looks pretty straight. Remove my pin and pin it in. All right. Let's put another pin on this side. And another one on this side. And I believe I have enough pins in this thing to go. So, well, no, one more. Look at that. What I just noticed is when I pick this up, I have a flat seam on this side, but on this side, you see how that seam allowance is flipping back? I already know it's going to happen. I'm going to sew across this and my feed dogs are going to grab this and they're going to flip this point like that. Let's not let that happen. I'm going to go ahead and take the time to put a pin there because it's faster to put a pin in something than it is to seam rip it and fix it, right? That's my way of thinking. All right, now I'm ready to go. All right, let's take our pins out and see how we did. Always the moment, right? See how good we did pinning? I'm just going to kind of give it a look before I take it to the iron. That's right where I want it. These seams match. So far, so good. Yep, yep, and yep. Okay, wonderful. Let's go ahead and get it pressed out. So again, I'm going to set my seam. I'm going to turn this over, and I am definitely going to press this open. Now this is my wool pressing mat. I absolutely love this mat. It's amazing. It is just absolutely amazing. My seams are flatter when I use a wool pressing mat. It's like the wool kind of moves when you're pressing, right? It shifts a little bit, so then your seam allowance actually moves down into the wool, allowing that iron to have contact right exactly where you need it. So when I turn this over and press it like this, you can see how flat my block lays. It just This wool mat is just amazing. We use wool mats here at Shabby. On all the projects that we do, we use wool mats. We absolutely love a wool pressing mat. If you don't have one yet, I'd recommend you get one. This is an amazing thing to have. Did you know you can wash these? If this becomes soiled, take this to a laundry sink or your kitchen sink and just run cool water on it. It's not going to hurt it. And then I just set mine up on its end to dry. It's good as new. They're amazing. I love this mat. All right, and here's my block. Look at that. Beautiful. It looks fantastic. So we learned about half square triangles, fast flying geese. We learned about star singles, pinwheels. We snowballed the corners. There is a lot going on in this video. So if you're still with me, thank you for that. Thanks for hanging in there. I appreciate you. I hope you've learned something in this tutorial. Please give me a thumbs up if you would. Leave a nice comment. I love seeing your comments. I love reading them. I really do read your comments. And Michelle also reads every single comment that you guys leave for us. Go ahead and hit that bell and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. That way, every time we release a video, you'll be the first to know. So thank you again for joining me, and I'll see you next time on a Shabby Fabrics video.